Let's go. Let's do it. Let's have some fun. Hey everybody, how you doing out there? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're hanging in. Hope you're making it work in these end times. No, but it's just like the fun. It's the fun pre-end times. It's not like the I don't know. Maybe it's not so fun for a lot of people. But which is kind of what I talk about every week. How it's not so fun for a lot of people. Uh I'm gonna get into how the 4-day work week is fucking here, man. It is happening, and it is a step in the right direction. It is, and I'm gonna go into all the ways it's a step in the right direction. But there are studies showing that corporations that try a 4-day work week and pay you the same, they pay you for the 5 days. They all stick with it. They keep anyway. I need to save the anger. You got to put some of the anger in the tank for later. And I'm talking about something positive. Why am I angry about something positive? I'm like, this is great. I'm like, Jesus. I don't know. It's misdirected anger a bit. Most misdirected correctly. It's not always misdirected. So I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into. I have an epic. I'm one of these people now using the word epic to describe myself. Ugh, how pathetic is that? How gross are you, Lee? I have an epic episode of Most Censored News coming up at the end of this live stream, in which I will reveal, and you know what, this is going to split the crowd, because some of you are going to go, yeah, of course, and some of you are going to go, wait, what? I'm going to reveal how we can get rid of 99% of all police officers and not end up in a Mad Max fucking selling your neighbor's blood in a back alley to try and buy a Tootsie Pop world. All right. We're not going to end up there. I'm going to tell you how. And here's the thing that's going to creep you out. If you've never heard of this, some of you are going, yeah, of course. But for those of you who aren't, here's the thing that's going to creep you out is as you're learning each of the ways that this is going to happen, you're going to go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. You're going to be like, oh, all right, actually, yeah. So that's coming up. And, but that's at the end. So for those of you who already seen that, have no fear. That's that you're not wasting your time here. I'm going to get into how huge anti-war protest that's coming up that you should be focusing on. Also more about what's going on in Ohio, about how the water testing is not as legit as you might think. I mean, maybe many of you were like, I never thought it was legit. I thought it was bullshit from the beginning. That's what I like. I attract the people who like, see, I knew it was bullshit, but he gave me the facts about how it's bullshit. So now I can go and yell those at my father-in-law until he says I'm a disgrace to the family. That's what I can do now. All right, but first, before I get into all of those stories and more, let's start off with the ongoing, this is the trickle of proof that I and many others have been right about the war in Ukraine. And the last couple live streams, a week ago or so, I showed you the RAND report, basically telling the American establishment, the American ruling elite, that it was time to kind of wrap things up in Ukraine, because basically we've gotten what we wanted. Except for all the things we didn't get. But the thing is, the stuff the ruling elite didn't get out of the proxy war in Ukraine, they're not going to get. It's not happening. So this was a RAND report saying, hey, let's start socializing the idea that this thing's ending soon, that the U.S. is going to start withdrawing some of the support, and Ukraine needs to sit down at the peace table. Oh, really? Sit down at the peace table? That sounds like something many of us have been talking about since fucking day one. So I've been saying that for a couple of live streams, and I showed you how now the U.S. establishment is saying exactly that, and this is yet more proof that the U.S. is, and this socializing is the term that the RAND report used. Basically, slowly social engineering. Social engineering sounds a little dirty, so they don't say that. They say socializing. Basically, social engineering the idea that the war in Ukraine needs to end soon, and that Ukraine should finally sit down and cut a deal with Russia, which is how this thing was always going to end. It was just how many lives do you want to ruin in the process? And many of us were saying from day one, hey, I got an idea. Let's not ruin like almost any lives. Let's do it that way. And the U.S. war machine was like, we don't do that. We don't stop the destruction of millions of lives before it starts. No. So anyway, this is coming from by the way, geopoliticaleconomy.com, great website. This is the Council on Foreign Relations chief, which you guys probably know is top ruling echelon of the U.S. government, the Council on Foreign Relations. And he is saying that the Ukraine war is frozen and no territorial changes are expected. This is the war of attrition that I told you about, that Scott Ritter told you about, that they've been in for a long time, the war of attrition in Ukraine. And obviously, Russia is going to win a war of attrition. They have way more soldiers. They have way more military weaponry, unless the U.S. supplies Ukraine endlessly, which it's clear we're not going to do. So here is yet more of the socializing, quote unquote, of the end of the war in Ukraine. The president of the powerful U.S. government-linked Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haass, has argued that the proxy war in Ukraine is frozen. He said he expects no territorial changes in the next year of fighting between Russia and NATO-backed Ukrainian forces. At the same time, he dismissed the possibility of peace negotiations to end the frozen conflict. Quote, "There's no desire in Ukraine to compromise. If anything, they're escalating their demands." Which, if he's saying that the territorial gains, which is what it's about right now, right? How much of Ukraine is Russia going to take hold of, and hold and keep, at least under their purview. They may make Donbass an independent region or something, but it's basically under Russian control. And that's what's being decided right now. And if you're saying that this is frozen, that this conflict is frozen, there are no more territorial changes, then why the fuck would you increase Ukrainian demands? Are you out of your mind? But of course, it's not that they're out of their mind. It's that they're sociopaths and they don't care how many Ukrainians die in this, and they don't care how many refugees are created, and they don't care how many people are struggling across Europe as gas prices shoot through the roof and people don't have heating anymore in the middle of winter. They don't care about none of that factors into their decision at all. Here's something that you would never hear if you sat in any one of those meetings. I'll do an impersonation of something you'd never hear in one of those meetings. But what about the people who live there? Is this going to be bad for them? That is something you will never hear. If you were in any of those cabinet meetings, any of those meetings at the Council on Foreign Relations, that would never come up. At the same time, he dismissed the possibility of peace negotiations to end the frozen conflict, insisting there's no desire in Ukraine to compromise. Haass is a former U.S. diplomat who served as director of policy planning for the State Department in the George W. Bush administration during the lead up to its illegal invasion of Iraq. And it also goes to show the revolving door in the U.S. ruling elite, right? You have the former Bush administration, former diplomat at the head of the Council on Foreign Relations. And he says, if you ask me a year from now, if we were to meet again, I think we're going to see something pretty similar to where we are. I don't expect the next year to bring fundamental changes in who controls what amount of territory in Ukraine. So, although this is not the full-on socializing of, quote unquote, of the end of the war, meaning Ukraine sitting down at the negotiating table, the peace table with Russia, although he's not saying that will be happening. Others in the U.S. administration are. The socializing has begun. I can't remember who it was that I quoted for you the last live stream saying that that the U.S. can't fund this forever, can't. Was it Blinken? I can't remember which one it was, but saying that the U.S. We said we're in it for as long as needed. That didn't mean for as much equipment as needed. Well, then what the fuck else did it mean? That's exactly what it's the only thing it could have meant. But he's like, no, we meant we'll cut off the support and we'll just be off to the sidelines with a little foam finger. Yeah, go Nazis. All right, Nazis. Woo! Uh, of course, it meant equipment and weapons of war. That's everything the U.S. is doing. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that to you as a quick update of the continued. There's a drip, drip, drip going on right now. That's a combination of various high-level U.S. and NATO officials saying things like might be time to wrap it up, including mainstream media outlets saying we I don't know if someone's kidding or not. Someone in the comments says Nazis. What are you talking about, Lee? Can someone else in the comment thread explain that to them, because I'm not going to go through it all again. But including mainstream media talking about how, this is a big moment in the war in Ukraine. They don't say proxy war, but the proxy war in Ukraine. This is a big moment. And after this moment, the next couple months, we'll see what happens. And then it's time to wrap things up. It's like the U.S. right now is like yelling to the kids out in the yard. Guy is playing football out in the yard. It's like fucking 8 p.m. Kids, you got time to wrap it up. Last few downs. That's what we are right now. Except it involves a lot more killing than that. And it would be like if the parent sent the kids out there to go play football in the first place, and then there was a lot of killing and death and refugees. Yeah, not the best football game. Not the best. That's not a good one. All right. I wanted to bring you that as a quick update, but I want to get into I haven't talked about this in a while, but I think this could be one of the bigger pushes for workers in the coming couple years, is this push for a 4-day work week. Now, I will start out by saying I don't want there to be any slave labor. In my view of the world, we'd be evolved past this capitalist bullshit little spark of human evolution that is, the moment where we just exploited the entire environment and everything. And then once we evolve and get to the other side of this, get over that peak, and we'll keep evolving to becoming something much better, I would like to see a world where you don't live in wage slavery, where your life is not like, I guess I'll stay in this job I hate because I have no idea how the fuck I'd afford healthcare for my family if I weren't in this job I hate. I don't know how that would fucking work. My view of reality is that. So I want to make that clear up top. I don't want to go into promotion of a 4-day work week acting like I want to see people working all the time. However, in our current world, in our current atmosphere in which we live, I accept that most people do have to work many or the vast majority at jobs they fucking hate or dislike. And polls show that the vast majority, I think it's like in the 70 and 80% of people working dislike their job to some degree. They either say they dislike it, they're bored, they hate it, some level of dislike is like 70, 80%, at least in the United States. And so it's an insane way to set up our society. Oh, you've just relinquished the most important thing of your existence, which is your waking hours. You've relinquished like a third to a half of it, probably more like a half. But that's fine. That's the best way we can set things up. That's the only way this shit can work. So I want to see people work less, but get paid the same, get the same benefits. I would see that as a step in the right direction. And sure enough, that is happening. I brought you last time, like a month ago, 2 months ago, I brought you an Iceland study that something like 80% of Iceland is either in companies that have a 4-day work week, and you get paid for 5, by the way. This is not just less time. This is 4 days, get paid for all 5. 80% is either currently in a 4-day work week or headed towards a 4-day work week in Iceland. So, but it is spreading far beyond Iceland, the utopian paradise of Iceland, where their Icelandic police have killed 1 person since Iceland's independence in the 1940s. One dude. And I think they felt really bad about that one dude, honestly. But here it is. This is from the Wall Street Journal, no less. The paper of cutthroat capitalist bullshit. And even they are acknowledging that after testing a 4-day work week, companies say they don't want to stop. A large majority of UK companies participating in a test of a 4-day work week said they would stick with it after logging sharp drops in worker turnover and absenteeism while largely maintaining productivity during the 6-month study. Now, unfortunately, productivity remains the same or actually increases when you decrease workers to 4 days and pay them the same. I think I would like to see productivity actually decrease a lot because I don't want to. Here's the, I talk about the multiple layers of reality on one, and sometimes you can have competing thoughts on like if you look at the different layers. On one layer, I want productivity to stay the same because I want people to get to a 4-day work week. And I know that corporate America and corporate UK and corporate everywhere is not going to go to a 4-day work week and pay you for 5 unless they're getting the same shit out of it because it's an exploitative system. They're not going to lose money and be like, yeah, let's go to a 4-day work week. So on that regard, I want the productivity to stay the same. Because I want them to go to a 4-day work week. I want you to get that 3rd weekend day paid time off every week. I want that for you. I want that for everyone. However, then at the deeper layer, which, by the way, you won't hear this talked about in mainstream media. You won't hear it talked about in most independent media. On a deeper level, productivity is kind of killing us. Not all of it, but like, if a tiny bit fewer shirts get pumped out of a sweatshop, it's probably better for the world. If a slightly fewer people get exploited with marketing, which, how many people have jobs in marketing, probably better for the world and better for the future of humankind. If it wasn't 1/6 of our population is in transportation somehow, which those jobs could disappear if self-driving cars and trucks become an actual reliable thing. All those jobs, it's like, I'd kind of like to see productivity go down. I'd like to see cars on the road with less fossil fuel use, trucks going 1 day a week less with less fossil fuel use. So in that regard, I would like to see productivity actually go down. But I also am rooting for workers. I'm rooting for average people. I want you and everyone on this fucking planet to work less and get paid the same if we're going to stay in this bullshit capitalist system. That's what I want. In my ideal system, you work 12 minutes a week and you get paid for the 5 days and your productivity is roughly 12 minutes worth. I'd like to see that. Because I'd like to see you fucking have some fun and get some time off. And everyone. Because most of our jobs are bullshit. Most of them are bullshit. Honestly, tell me the one that means something. It's like doctors. That's it. It's the only one is people helping save people's lives. And a lot of doctors are shitty. And a lot of doctors are just doing what like Big Pharma told them to, pushing pills people don't need. So a lot of them are shitty too. But yeah, it's all right. So they're saving people. I'll give that one as like a legit job. I mean, this job isn't legit. I don't know what I do. Come on. But most of the shit we're doing with humankind is it's kind of ridiculous. It's not actually meaningful. Someone says teachers. Yes, teachers are good if they're teaching something good, which a lot of teachers are not. You know how much racist history is taught across America to this day? Like, it's much better than when I was in fucking 6th grade. When I was in 6th grade, slavery was like a literal footnote, not like a metaphorical footnote, like a footnote in the history book. They'd be like, oh yeah, there were a lot of slaves. No, they had a couple of pages on slavery, but it was like a couple of pages on slavery in a book that was 700 pages long. And you had 2 on slavery, and then there'd be a whole page on Harriet Tubman. Like Harriet Tubman was the extent of slaves trying to get freed, and that was it. So yeah. Anyway, point being, There are wonderful teachers. There are amazing teachers. And there are also a lot of really shitty teachers. So, but let's go back to these trials of this 4-day work week, which it was done across UK companies, in many UK companies. One of the largest trials of the 4-day work week to date. 61 British businesses, ranging from banks to fast food restaurants to marketing agencies, gave their 2,900 workers a paid day off. So I like that it also was in a bunch of different areas. This wasn't just office workers, because I think it'd be easy to say, like, okay, it works in an office because they can continue to do work at home on their computers, but it wouldn't work in like a restaurant or something like that. But in fact, they did it across all these different places, all these different types of work. Many of them businesses that had to be done at the business. So fast food restaurants as an example. And they gave the 2,900 workers a paid day off a week to see whether they could get just as much done while working less, but more effectively. More than 90% said they would continue testing the shorter week, while 18 planned to make it permanent, according to a new report from the study's organizers. So over 90%, or exactly 90% of these businesses are either, after doing this test, either are like, yeah, let's keep doing it. Let's see. And this is 6 months. So they haven't found anything wrong with it yet. They're like, let's keep going with it. Or they've made it permanent. And that shows that, like, both sides, not that I want corporate shit houses to get something out of it, but that shows both sides are getting something out of this. Like, the people are healthier. They're happier. Actually, I'm about to read that, so I probably shouldn't give it all away. Oh, yeah, there it is. Companies in the U.S. and Canada recently concluded a smaller pilot of a 4-day work week led by the UK study organizers, and similar trials are in works in Australia, Brazil, and elsewhere. Consumer goods company Unilever, by the way, Unilever fucking sucks, but I get you want this to be tried on the largest possible level. Recently tested the concept in New Zealand offices, while Spain's government plans to pay companies to experiment with a 4-day work week. In a study in Iceland, yeah, that's the one I've talked about before, involving more than 2,500 employees across industries, researchers found most workers maintained or improved their productivity and reported reduced stress. The trial found 46% of companies said, this is not the one in Iceland, this is back to the one in UK. 46% of companies said their business productivity had remained about the same, while 34% reported a slight improvement and 15% a significant improvement. So you add those up, and that's almost the entirety. What do we got there? We got 70, 80%, 95% of all the trials reported either the same productivity or higher productivity, meaning they're literally not losing anything. They're losing nothing, except they're losing fewer workers because less people quit from burnout. 39% of employees said they were less stressed than before the pilot program started. About half reported no change. Nearly half observed improvement in mental health, and 37% also noted an improvement in physical health. So the people are fucking healthier too. So I imagine you folks watching right now, you have all kinds of different jobs. Like, every job under the sun probably is represented in the people watching this. If it's at all a possibility, take this Wall Street Journal article. You can Google it yourself. Take the Wall Street Journal. It's also in other outlets as well. But take the Wall Street Journal article, slip it in front of your boss, and say, what if you pay us not to be here today? How about that? Now, that being said, we should also all be fighting to get past this horrible system in which you sell your life to corporations. That is something we should also be fighting towards. Why don't we talk about that as well? That article you're not going to see in the Wall Street Journal. They're not going to be like, hey, by the way, if you're tired of selling your life to a corporation and it's fucking misery, then, so that you can afford health care, then how about we think of a new economic system? What? By the way, the word, everything, so much of our conversation revolves around economics, right? It's the best capitalism, the best economic system. It's our economic GDP. The term economics, like that term wasn't even heavily used until it existed, but it wasn't heavily used until like World War II, World War I and II, when so it's not like we just think it's like part of humankind is all about economics. It's like, no, they during the world wars, they were like, we need a way to calculate how much is being produced and shit like that. And GDP didn't even become like this main talking point. How much a country pumps out didn't become a main talking point until like the 70s and 80s. So all of these ideas are the blink of an eye in terms of the history of humankind. And they're even the blink in the eye in terms of like modern humans, like past 1,000 years. There's the economics and GDP was not a thing until like yesterday. And now it's like most of our conversations are like, oh, it's the best capitalism, the best economic system. Because we got to keep producing stuff. Everybody's got to be producing at all times. And you know why they believe everything has to be produced at all times? It's not because we're gaining anything from all this production. It's, well, the rich are gaining a lot, but it's because capitalism has to keep growing or it collapses. It is the idea of endless growth on a planet with finite resources, with not endless resources. And so it is a cancer, and cancer inevitably kills the host. That's the definition of capitalism. But we're going to keep going down that path. However, within that fight, I say, let's fucking make the fight for a 4-day work week and so many other things that for those of you who are fighting to create a union, fighting to get better benefits, fighting to get healthcare. I'm not saying stop those fights and focus on this. Absolutely not. But I'm saying, let's make this a major upcoming fight in the next couple years, because this is one of those rare things where people benefit. And here's the other thing that I'll say quietly: don't tell the corporate rulers. Okay, so this next part, and if you are a corporate ruler and you're spying on this this live stream, then turn it off right now, because I have something to say to the like good people out there. So don't tell them this part. But if we all had an extra day a week to just like breathe and to develop our minds and to grow and to pursue our passions and to take care of our families and like actually see our kids and that kind of shit. Like if we had that, people would have more time to like think and to think about evolving or revolving past this current abusive system. And so secretly, that's why another reason why I want you to have an extra day off a week, paid day off a week. But we will, okay, corporate rulers out there, all of you who regularly watch my show, which is fucking millions, please you can turn it back on now. You can turn on the sound again. Thank you. But yes, I think this should be a major fight because both sides win. Corporations win because they get the same amount of productivity. They have to supply less coffee at the fucking coffee pot. That's 1 day a week less coffee. Imagine if they spend $10 on that coffee every day, that's a lot of money across 10 years. They'll save money at the coffee pot. They'll save money at cleaning the bathrooms. You won't be using their shitter 1 day a week. There's a lot for them to get out of this. So there it is. And these studies keep showing. It's like the studies on universal basic income. It's like every time they happen, they show the same thing, that it works great, that it helps people with their health and their happiness and everything. And every time then there's oh my God, this study worked great for people. And they just keep studying it. We're just studying the shit out of it. Hey, fucking stop studying. Do the thing. Keep doing it. Do it. We're just studying. Oh, well, we've done 37 studies and we're thinking of doing a study on the studies to see which of the studies is. And the studies all show the same thing. It works great, man. It works great. Universal basic income gets rid of extreme poverty, helps people. Like when people aren't hungry and desperate, it decreases crime, it decreases poor decision making, it decreases depression, decreases like things like abusing drugs to try and get by, because life is so tough. So it would decrease the opioid epidemic. All these things would be decreased, and they study it and they study it and they study it, and then the ruling class goes, "Hey, think we're going to study this. Yeah, we're going to do a study on this. How about we fucking do it? How about that?" All right, I wanted to highlight this next thing. Oh, real quick, hit thumbs up, hit subscribe, please. Trying to get to 40,000 subscribers on rumble.com/Lee Camp. We're getting close. Please help me get there. Hit the follow button. It's free to do that, so I hope you'll do that. All right, so do all those things. Oh, and if you haven't, one thing is join the free email list. You text the word censored to 33777. But also, all the stuff I do is multiple podcasts. One is called Moment of Clarity. One is called Common Censored, and one is called Government Secrets. I hope you will check out each of them. But also, because Spotify banned my podcast, I had to rename it. So on Spotify, it's called The Lee Camp Show. Thank you, James. Profit sharing, yeah. But that is going to be a harder sell, I think, for the employers. But I'm all for it. All right, so I want to get into this next topic. There was an anti-war rally in D.C., Rage Against the War Machine, I believe it was called. And I talked about it a little bit with David Swanson, who was a speaker there. We did a live stream. And, there were some great speeches given there. But I think the complaints that it was mostly or heavily libertarian, I think there are some complaints to be had there. That it did not seem that certain, I think, incredibly awesome anti-war groups and people were reached out to. They were left out for whatever reason. I'm not going to get into because I don't know the truth. I don't know the internal politics, so therefore I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to speak about that because I don't know how it worked. But there is another anti-war rally coming up, which actually seems to include all of those amazing groups that should have been there, that do amazing anti-war work and have been doing it for years and years. And this is coming up Saturday, March 18th. March 18th, National March on Washington, Peace in Ukraine and Stop NATO. And I'm going to read you some of I don't know if I'll go through the whole list because it's honestly too long, but this is it starts at 1 p.m. in Washington. And let me tell you I'm going to tell you what the demands are first. Key demands. So I guess there's some others, but the key demands are peace in Ukraine, negotiations, not escalation, abolish NATO, end U.S. militarism and sanctions. For any of those who need an explainer, NATO is not a peace organization. It is a war organization. It will create war, and it will likely be at the forefront of the next nuclear apocalypse if we find ourselves there. NATO is not good for peace. It is good for war. Fund people's needs, not the war machine. And that's about taking these billions and billions, really trillions if you count our entire military, taking it and using it to help people here at home in the United States. No war in China or no war with China. Absolutely. Because yet again, that's putting us on the cusp of nuclear war. Why the fuck would you want that? We are in a climate crisis. We need global cooperation. We need people working together, nations working together. That is the only way we are going to stem the tide of extinction, which, I'm not in the mood for extinction. Like, I don't know. Maybe some of you are. Maybe so you're just like, you know what? I feel like this next year would be good for extinction. I'm really still leaning against it. Okay. I'm still leaning. I had a brief period in my teens where I was ambivalent, but I'm going opposed to extinction. I'm feeling pretty good about that decision. End U.S. aid to racist apartheid Israel. Fight racism and bigotry at home, not other people's. U.S. hands off Haiti and AFRICOM. So those are key demands. Fight racism and bigotry at home is a good one. That's kind of important. So here are some of the organizations. I don't even know all of them, but I know most of them, and the ones I know are generally amazing. Answer Coalition, amazing, been doing this work for years and years. The People's Forum, Code Pink, amazing, been doing the anti-war work for years and years. Black Alliance for Peace, amazing. United National Anti-War Coalition, World Beyond War. That's the organization David Swanson founded. I told you I spoke to him recently. Popular Resistance, wonderful and amazing organization and outlet. And actually, I'm speaking to the founder of Popular Resistance on Friday on a live stream. Feel free to watch leecamp.net if you want to check that out. Margaret Flowers, by the way, didn't say her name. Veterans for Peace. And actually, ironic, they're back to back. I'm talking to the founder of Veterans for Peace the week after that, Gary Condon. So, yeah, that's another amazing organization. Gary Condon's been doing this work for, years and years, ever since I think Vietnam was the war he was in, and has been against war ever since. Party for Socialism and Liberation. Al-Adda, the Palestine Right to Return Coalition. U.S. Labor Against Racism and War. National Council of Eritrean Americans, which is, I've covered it a little bit, but another area that the U.S. has heavily fucked with. I'll use technical terminology there. I don't know that you need any more clarification than that. Heavily fucked with Eritrea. One of the key countries in Africa that the U.S. is continually fucking with. Leonard Peltier Defense Committee. Leonard Peltier, obviously famous political prisoner here in the United States. Universal African People's Organization. Co-op Anti-War Cafe, Berlin. International Action Center, East Bay Democratic Socialists of America. Jim Lafferty, National Lawyers Guild, LA chapter. Women Against Military Madness. Nevada Green Party. Green Party of Michigan. Ohio Peace Council. You guys get the idea. I won't bore you by reading this for the next half hour. But these are all amazing organizations, or the ones I know are amazing organizations. And this looks very legit. These are the type of organizations that should have been invited to the last one as well. And yeah, so can't imagine that's not going to be amazing, by the way. I hope people who are able to promote it and support it and demand an end to war, work on helping raise awareness for that event. All right, let's keep it going with a little update on Ohio. So someone's asking if I'm going to be there. It's unlikely because I'm going to be in the middle of a move then, and I don't think it's possible. I really, really want to be there, but I think it's somewhat unlikely. Although I'm still trying to see if there's any chance in hell I could do it. But all right, so I've obviously brought to you the story of what's been going on in Ohio, and I brought you some details that are not being covered by the mainstream media. I'm not saying the mainstream media hasn't covered the Ohio catastrophe to some level. I think they all probably have, but they're not generally bringing you all the details. The fact that this disaster was caused by, big surprise, corporate exploitation, corporate extraction, corporate cutting of regulations, cutting of inspectors, cutting of workers, putting more train cars onto already fucking 2.5 mile long trains. I mean, when I was a kid, we lived by train tracks, and you'd see them go by for just days and days. And, as a kid, you find it fun. You're like, yeah, it's still going. But when you're in your car waiting for the train crossing, you're like, for fuck's sake, what am I, Job? It's miserable. But so this was caused by corporate greed, as are most of our catastrophes. I mean, for one thing, these type of chemicals, toxic chemicals, should not be on full-size trains to begin with. They should be on little tiny 2-car trains. That way, if you have a crash, you have one. You have one fucking thing. But on top of it, a 2-car train is immensely easier to control and less likely to have a crash like this. Because when you take whatever, I don't know how many train cars are on a 2.5 mile train, but when you take 200 train cars, whatever the fuck, and if something goes wrong with any one of them, then you're going to have a pileup of like 50 or whatever it is, 90, some fucking crazy number of train cars all on top of each other, all on fire. Whereas if you have a 2-car train, then the odds that one of those is involved in some sort of accident, far slimmer. But of course, corporate America doesn't want to do that because that would require a lot more like drivers and things, conductors. And it's easier to just latch everything onto one and truck that across America. But here's some other news about the water testing that has gone on in Ohio as to whether that water is toxic or not. I mean, people knew that obviously it was toxic. They knew that immediately to some level because all the fish were dying. But there's an argument as to whether it remained toxic. Did those chemicals just wash away after the first day and then it's clean again? Also, are these chemicals that are killing on the fish, are they taken out in the general cleaning process, filtering process that all river water goes through before it ends up in your tap? So those are some of the questions. But here's an update. Water testing after Ohio derailment led by the rail company itself. That's right. The testing that Ohio authorities relied on to declare the municipal water in East Palestine, I think is how they pronounce it, Palestine safe to drink after a disastrous train derailment was funded by the railroad operator itself and did not initially comply with federal standards. Big surprise. Just total shocker that this rail company would, do the cheapest, quickest, it's clean analysis of the water. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine on Wednesday afternoon announced that new testing from 5 wells that supply the town's municipal drinking water showed no evidence of contamination after a Norfolk Southern freight train loaded with tons of hazardous materials derailed on February 3rd. With these test results, Ohio EPA is confident that the municipal water is safe to drink, DeWine's office wrote. The Columbian County General Health District separately sampled the water last week. But as of Friday, the county's testing results had not been made public. The public information officer said it did not receive preliminary results. So we don't actually know outside of that one EPA assessment, but we do know that the initial claims that the water was clean was coming from the rail company's testers, which is roughly the last people you should ever trust on whether their own derailment has made the water poor to drink, let's say. Now, I don't want to, if anyone's near there, knows someone near there, I don't want to freak people out by saying, I know for certain the water's toxic. I don't know. It sounds like there's some argument on that fact. But what we do know is that the initial testing was done by the railroad, and I'm going to say it was probably done on the cheap to just take a guess. And here's another reason why I know it was done on the cheap. Here's how much Norfolk Southern has agreed to give to Ohio to fix their highly polluted, toxic area that's killed Lord knows how many fish, that's made the air unbreathable, that's caused people headaches in the entire area. Let's see how much. Norfolk Southern is giving $25,000 to an Ohio town where it caused a life or death evacuation. $25,000, folks. That's what Norfolk Southern is throwing their way. That should fix it. I mean, from what I know of cleaning up dozens and dozens of on fire, toxic chemical cars, from what I know, $25,000 should do it. That should do it. should clean it all up. Of course, I'm kidding. 25,000 is a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket for cleaning it up. It's also a drop in the bucket for what Norfolk Southern makes. On February 6th, an apocalyptic plume of gas rose over the village of East Palestine, blotting out the sky. Norfolk Southern, the U.S. railway company responsible for the toxic spew of vinyl chloride, has now offered a $25,000 donation to assist the area's nearly 5,000 residents. What is that, like $5 a person? Can you imagine if they gave that out individually? They were like, here's your $5. Don't spend it all in one place. My kids have got a nosebleed for the last 2 weeks. I said, don't spend it all in one place. Enjoy. You might want to use that $5 to get some tissue because your kid a bit of a nosebleed. 5,000 residents who were ordered to evacuate their home or face death. Oh, so that's just the 5,000 is just the number that were ordered to evacuate. So it's not the entire area, which much of the area was not told to evacuate. We have established a family assistance center to address the needs of the community and support those directly impacted, Norfolk Southern said. Following the fiery derailment, the train carried out a controlled release of hazard. Yeah, how controlled? How controlled? Let me ask you this. Let me show you this image. How controlled does this look to you? Does that look controlled? That's a controlled release. No, these people don't fucking care about humans. They don't even care enough to just call it a release. to just say, hey, we released a bunch of toxic chemicals into the air. You're welcome. You're welcome, Ohio. Controlled release. I think what the controlled applies to is they're trying to control the population by lying to them. Norfolk Southern has a history of lobbying against safety regulations. The publicly traded company, which has a market value of $55 billion, and they sent $25,000, though. That's going to hurt that market value. $25,000 to that town in Ohio. $55 billion is their value. Fought the Federal Railroad Administration's push to upgrade the Civil War-era brake system. And this is why I brought this to you on Saturday's live stream with Eleanor, that the Railroad Workers Union called it a 19th century failure that caused this disaster. In the 1800s was the last time we saw these type of problems, meaning like axles overheating and no precaution taken to make sure that doesn't happen, or to make sure that if an axle is overheating, the train fucking stops. None of that. 19th century failure. Safety concerns have also grown amid Norfolk Southern's implementation of precision scheduling railroading, an operation policy criticized as corporate money grab. To cut costs, companies slashed jobs by more than a fifth, ignoring concerns that understaffing could impact railway safety, while also initiating a $10 billion stock buyback that goes into the pockets of wealthy shareholders. So this is, and to get to a deeper layer of this that you won't get from your mainstream media, this is not a fluke. This is the gravity of capitalism. This is where it goes. This is where it ends up. It ends up in a place where the corporations are rich as, again, I'm going to get into some technical terminology. If you don't follow any of the technical terms, you feel free to email me. I'll send you an explainer. But these companies don't give technical term a flying fuck, okay, about you or the people in Ohio or any of it. Not a single flying fuck. I think you can find that terminology in like a legal dictionary. And that's where the gravity of capitalism ends. That's where it goes. The people that are put in these boardrooms are sociopaths by definition. If they weren't sociopaths, if anyone in that boardroom said, and before this disaster said, you know what, this worries me. I feel like we need to be a little safer. I feel like we should spend some money, have more employees, have fewer trains on the track. That person's not in the boardroom anymore. That's the end of their career. They got to that decision-making spot by being a fucking sociopath. And that's how you end up with this shit. And if there are a thousand train catastrophes like this. Many of them don't end like this with the toxic spill. Most of them are just a, derailing of a few cars or something. But there's 1,000 a year, 1,000 a year because of this shit. And this is how the system works. This is how the goddamn system works. All right. I want to now bring you the new episode of Most Censored News, which is also the gravity of capitalism. Because in order to, and I'll give you the segue to policing, because that's what this episode is about. This upcoming episode is about. The segue is that the gravity of capitalism slowly extracts all of the wealth to a tiny number of individuals. Now, as that inequality gets worse and worse and worse and worse, and 80% of the population gets crushed and more and more and more, then shit starts to break down, right? And when shit starts to break down, the ruling elite think, you know what we need to solve this? We don't need to help those people. We don't need to decrease poverty. We don't need to make it easier to live. We don't need to have a great social safety net that would that would help a lot of people and make a lot of people happier and less depressed, and therefore there would be far less crime. They don't think that. They don't go with any of those solutions. They go with more police, more and more heavily armed police. That's where they go. And so I wanted to do an episode going through everything police do, all of their jobs, and showing everybody with a sprinkling of laughter how we can get rid of 99% of all police, replaced with other things, and society would not break down. You're not going to end up in that Mad Max world. You're not going to end up living in the basement of Fight Club. And I want you to watch this and see what you think. And if you think this next episode, this episode I'm about to play for you, is something important and you want to show people as a crazy idea, then I hope you will go and share it with people. You can get just that segment if you want just this episode alone, the Most Censored News alone. You can go to youtube.com/behind the headlines to grab that. But here it is, and I'm not going to come back on it afterwards, so I will bid you farewell before I click play on this latest episode. But I do hope that if you think you got anything out of this, I hope you will become a member at leecamp.net. It's the only way I support this show at all. It's leecamp.net. So I hope you will join up over there and get all the exclusive content and everything. But all right, here is and make sure you hit subscribe and all that good stuff. But here's the latest episode of Most Censored News that just came out. Here's how to get rid of 99% of police and not have everything fall apart. I'm not kidding. So you already know the basics. Killing by U.S. police reached a record number last year, which is horrifying and means about 1 out of every 10 or 12 murders in America is done by police. Also, they brutalize and destroy the lives of millions more in other ways. Beating, arresting, escalating situations, not to mention just being a dick. Just being a dick. Plus the cost. The U.S. spends at least $759 million per day on police and prisons, $277 billion a year. So perhaps, call me nutty, it's time to have far fewer police in our country and take the billions we spend on them and put that money into other types of jobs to deal with societal situations. And then take whatever's left over and have a national pizza party, topless. Stay with me. Let's try something crazy. Let's look at what U.S. police actually do every day and see how many of their jobs can be replaced. And I'm not saying get rid of all police tomorrow and see what happens. You and I both know that would mean your neighbor with the handlebar mustache and the 24 pet parakeets would be dry humping the jungle gym at the park in no time if there wasn't some kind of community watch. But maybe we can get that number of actual armed U.S. police down from around 800,000 to around 60. 60 dudes. 60 roided up assholes. That's all. That's a reasonable number we could keep track of, know where they are at all times. And of those, at least half would be dressed as burlesque dancers, just to keep things festive. Now, you all know that most police time is spent standing around with their dicks in their hands and the thumbs up their asses. So first of all, we get rid of all that time. But even if you look beyond all that pointless time, most of what police do in America This is bullshit. I'm going to show a chart that ignores all the standing around and only shows the incident reports cops file. So this is just what they respond to. The chart was created by criminologist Jerry Radcliffe, who used 2015 data from Philadelphia, a city with relatively high crime rates. The area of each box represents the proportion of reported incidents within that category. The larger the box, the more incident reports. Okay, unfounded radio calls is the most filed report. Cops being called when they don't need to be. So that means either someone is calling them for a stupid reason. Hey, I need the police. My kid is not eating his cold McNuggets and I'm trying to teach the prick a lesson. Or it means people got spooked and called the cops. Send the popo. There's a pervert out in my tree. Or it could be a squirrel, but it's a perverted squirrel. Well, one of the reasons cops are called so much for nonsense is because we are socially engineered to believe cops are the solution to everything. People think idiots with guns will solve anything, from a raccoon in a garbage can to a neighbor who called you a twat bag. We could stop most, if not all, of these calls by changing the cultural understanding. Let's change it to police are not your daddy, all right? Don't call people with firearms unless you're in a goddamn war. Unless there's 15 Yakuza out front with throwing stars, don't call the cops. Next up, investigate premises. This is basically calling the cops because you're scared of the dark. Just come investigate. I don't know what's in there. Oh, come on. What are you, 5? Man up and investigate your fucking selves. And I don't like the term man up because most men I know are wimps. So woman up and get in there. But in all seriousness, we could have unarmed community watch groups who are paid well, trained well, care about their jobs, know how to deal with a lot of situations like mental illness, homelessness, struggling folks, but they wouldn't be killing anyone or destroying anyone's lives. And in fact, many cities are adopting programs that send EMTs and social workers to mental health 911 calls instead of police. This is a way of bringing care into the crisis, one social worker said. You see it in the moment. You say, wow, this is different, and you feel it. Now, in my version, these community watch folks would have big reflective vests and big lights and jester hats with the bells on the end, so they wouldn't be sneaking up on anyone, because when people get surprised, they overreact. And when they overreact, they do stupid shit. But 99.99% of the time, the person in the dark trespassing somewhere is not the Zodiac killer with a human ear hanging out of his mouth. It's a homeless person looking for somewhere to sleep, or a drunk dude looking to take a dump, or 2 teenagers looking to bone. And any of those will scurry off when they see a brightly lit up group of jesters walking toward them. Problem solved. No cops needed. False burglary alarms. Same as the investigate premises crap. Send the community watch dressed like Santa's little helpers, and they'll be playing music too, like an ice cream truck. Cops not needed. Derelict vehicles. You don't need cops checking on a broken down hatchback. Sending armed dudes and ladies to face off against a car without a tire? That's like sending the Marines in because your dishwasher won't drain. We should be ashamed as a society that we ever thought we needed an army to handle an empty vehicle. Does it matter what kind of vehicle? What if it were a rickshaw with a broken wheel? Would you send the cops for that? How about a bicycle with no seat? What about a single abandoned rollerblade? Would the cops come, put a white chalk outline around the skate just for fingerprints, take DNA samples? So that one's gone too. Moving on. Request for information? That should be fielded by elderly librarians with a tube of hemorrhoid cream on the desk who actually have information. I mean, you're an idiot if you walk up to a guy with a firearm on his hip to ask where the kebab restaurant is. Hey, look, there's a man running down the street with a bloody hatchet. Let's query him as to where the best roadside froyo is. Don't go to the cops for information. You're out of your mind. All right, we've already eliminated nearly half of everything police do. We're making real progress here. Moving on, false fire alarms. Both false fire alarms and real fire alarms send firefighters. That's their job. We can have more of them. Are the armed maniacs with badges going to shoot the fire to death? Cops not needed. So we can get rid of that one and the fire damage box on this chart as well. City business and lost property. Let's not use the savage, racist police state to handle putting the paper clips on the files at City Hall. And lost property should be tackled by a retiree with a lot of time on their hands to go through 900 bedazzled cell phone cases. And that lost property person should not have any kills on their record. Yeah, some of the time I spend looking for a scarf that someone has misplaced, and then other times I spend shooting an automatic rifle at a drug kingpin. Those are my two responsibilities. So cops not needed. Animals. Animals should be dealt with by animal professionals. You know what cops do when they enter a house? They shoot the dog. That's step one. So why would we have the same people who shoot all the dogs trying to cuddle a scared cat? Next up, complaints against police. Guess what? That's the number one thing that should not be handled by police. That's like the Fox being asked to investigate Fox complaints. Complaints against police should be dealt with by anyone other than police. Disorderly crowds. One word, bouncers. Big, nasty dudes with neck tattoos and stretch marks and hearts of gold. They'd be trained in de-escalation, and they wouldn't be armed. If they can stop a group of horny Chicago businessmen from touching the dancers at Midnight Delight, then they'll have no problem handling a bunch of drunk tailgaters at an Eagles game. No need to call the cops. Instead, call big dudes with thick beards and a body odor that has its own social security number. That'll do the trick. Next up, disputes, domestic disputes, and minor disturbances. So a lot of these could be dealt with a new cultural understanding that when you're dealing with a minor disturbance, you don't call men with guns. You call a different group of people, dispute mediators, who are actually trained at de-escalation and can help people as opposed to just break their skulls. You see how that works? That would take care of most of these calls. But there are a certain percentage, I grant you, of domestic disputes that are serious spousal abuse or elder abuse, etc. However, regular police don't generally stop long-term abuse. And if the problem moderators, if they come and they see a situation where someone needs help on that level, then they could call in whatever kind of arrest is appropriate. Cops not needed. Traffic accidents, traffic enforcement, a DUI. Call me crazy, but why in the hell are people with guns and tasers responding to speed limit violations or traffic accidents? Firefighters, EMTs, medics, tow truck drivers, even some kind of legal note taker. Sure, send them all in. But people with guns and the ability to send you to prison for life? No. And if we want speed limit enforcers in our society, then let's make that a special job. Speed limit people. They have a fast little cart with little funny lights on it, and they wouldn't have guns because that would be insane. Instead of guns, they'd have mints. Yes, mints. They'd give you a chocolate, little chocolate mint to ease the pain of the ticket. And no one would shoot the speed limit mint givers because that's madness. That would be like shooting your mailman or a crossing guard. Not a single brand of traffic enforcement needs to be done by a police state. For those who refuse to stop, they'd take a picture of their license plate and it'd be handled at a higher level. But let's get all the armed madmen with the badges off the fucking roads. Wow, we're really doing great. Just imagine how many hundreds of thousands of police we've already eliminated and all the danger that removed from our society. Next up, truancy and curfew violations. We could have special truancy and curfew people as well. Maybe the same as the info people. I mean, they could do both jobs. But come on, any society that sends a steroidal beast with a gun to tell a 10-year-old he needs to show up to home ec isn't a civilized society. Cops not needed. Vandalism. You don't need cops to handle spray paint on a building any more than you need cops to go after rust on a building. How about bird poop on a building? Should you send the police in for that one? Vandalism can be solved by a good neighborhood watch who don't carry guns, mace, misplaced rage, and serious daddy issues. No cops needed. Moving on to judicial violations and city ordinances. Well, these can range from things like you can't dig near a water main to truly weird shit like in Los Angeles where you aren't allowed to have your dogs mating within 500 yards of a church. I say where better. Or Southington, Connecticut, where the use of silly string is banned at carnivals, parades, and public places. Now, I know I'm going out on a limb here, but I don't think police need to be involved in stopping someone from digging near a water main, spraying silly string, or dogs doing the doggy style outside a house of God. No, unarmed city facilitators should handle all that stuff if we even need those laws. We don't. They don't need to be called city facilitators, by the way. They can be whatever. They can be called happiness enforcers, the silly string patrol, the cocker spaniel cock blockers, whatever you want. But they wouldn't be trained to kill. Cops not needed. Well, look how much horrible policing we've already eliminated. Medical assistance should be done by EMTs and medics. Next, vices, like smoking in a no-smoking zone or drinking on a sidewalk or prostitution. First of all, most of those shouldn't be against the law. But secondly, I think the town's vigilante smoker could be brought to heel by our new unarmed city patrol. Maybe they could even have a little squirt gun so they could spray the end of the offending Marlboro. Prostitution could also be stopped with a squirt gun, I think. Cops not needed. Next up, simple assaults and harassment. Mixture of bouncers, social workers, and a headmaster to slap a guy's hand with a ruler and go, "That waitress didn't give you permission to call her sweet tits." Moving on, trespass, theft, burglary, robbery, weapons violations, and vehicle crime. I put these together because they're all similar with similar solutions. For one thing, a lot of these crimes could be solved by decreasing inequality and ending extreme poverty in this country, but we'll save those type of solutions for another time. But here's a dirty little secret of our police. Most theft, burglary, robbery, and vehicle crime is never solved. Most people who do those things are not dumb enough to hang around until the cops show up. And if they're gone, I got news for you. The police are not dusting for fingerprints and taking saliva samples to find out who broke your car window and stole your gym bag full of old socks and crusty underwear. If it's a larger crime, like a legit carjacking, well, they'll start monitoring tolls maybe and road cameras for a certain license plate. But that can be done in an office by an investigator, a detective that yet again does not need to be a gun-toting street warrior. Can be a nerd with a computer and an itchy trigger finger clicking a ballpoint pen. Now, some of you may respond, what if there are gangs of armed madmen stealing cars and assaulting people for sport and giving wedgies to suburban dads? Yes, there could be extreme situations where some kind of armed police presence is needed, such as an ongoing mass shooting or something like that. And that type of SWAT team could still exist for rare extreme moments. I'm sure even in Iceland, where there's been only one murder by police since the independence of that country 80 years ago, they probably still have the ability to deal with an armed maniac should it ever arise. But those armed police would be used very rarely and only when there's no other option. Basically the opposite of our current system, which is use armed police to do every different job that exists on the planet. From kicking people off of public benches to telling someone they can't drop their candy bar wrapper on the sidewalk. Drugs. I know this is an edgy line, but drugs should be a fucking health issue, all right? Not a crime issue. Portugal decriminalized drugs and has one of the best records in Europe. Plus, the biggest drug dealers in the world are Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and Novartis, and they aren't getting arrested for a goddamn thing. So check this out. We've gotten rid of 95% of all police. All we're left with is missing persons, child endangerment, sex offenses, rape, arson, fraud, embezzlement, and homicide, which amount to only a tiny number of police reports. But even those truly gnarly crimes, right, the worst of the worst, don't really need the number of cops we use for them. Most of the work with a murder, rape, arson, or fraud is done by the nerdy cops in an office making phone calls and looking over financial records and licking bloody bed sheets and going, tastes like Steve did it. It's not done by the brutish dummies you see on the street, the wannabe MMA fighters. So why don't we stop calling the office nerds police? It's a different job, really. We'll take away their guns and we'll call them desk detectives. Then the only moment you'd need people with weapons is during an actual arrest of a murder or rape suspect, which is very rare. So we could keep a few police around for that kind of thing, but not many, just a few per city. So we did it. We got rid of 99% of all police, and we did it without collapsing society. Think of all the harm, brutality, and toxic destruction we just removed from our entire country. Well done, folks. I'm really impressed with you. Now go out there and make it a reality. I suppose that's the harder part. But you got to start with the ideas before you can make a better world. And we got to realize abolishing most police is not radical. It's actually civilized. Imagine one day having a real civilization. That's it, folks. That's the most censored news for this week. A new episode comes out every week. Make sure you click subscribe. But also, I hope you will support us because we are completely independently funded. Just go to patreon.com/behindtheheadlines and keep fighting.